In this presentation, we're going to go through the basics of how to condition score a horse. What we want to do with condition scoring our horses is primarily just watch to make sure that they are maintaining an adequate body condition. We don't want to get them too fat, too thin. We also don't want to get them too fat. So here's a couple diagrams that you can see that the different areas that we're going to look to see the fat thickness on these horses. It's very similar to the condition score system that are also used in cattle. So if you look on the side of the horse, we want to look to see how much fat cover he has down his neck, over his withers, down over the sides of his ribs, behind his shoulders, also in his flanks, down here looking at the crease on his back, and then also up here at his tail head and behind his, between his legs. Another way we can look at it are some of these diagrams here that you can see as far as when we might be looking at the horse from behind to see the shape of his hips, to see if he's concave or convex, to look down the top to see what kind of groove that he might have down the top, and from our very skinny horse of a 1 up into our fatter horse of the 9. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll show you a body condition score app that you can use that really does a really nice job of going through all the different condition scores. But here's some illustrations of our skinniest horses, where our 1s, because we do them on a scale of 1 to 9, and the 1 horses are ones that are extremely emaciated. I say kind of always look like a bag of bones walking around. Our 3s are like this horse here, where really you can still pretty much see everything, see most of his ribs and many of his bones, just having a little bit of more cover to him. And really I don't think anybody would argue that both of these horses are going to be very unacceptable. The ones that we're going to shoot for where we really want our horses are in that 5 to 7-ish range. Where a condition score of 5, if you can read this description or go into some of the other tutorials, is where we could run our hands over his ribs and we can still feel them, but they're not going to be easily seen, and carrying a little bit more fat over his shoulder in all the different areas. A 7 is a horse that even if you run your hands over him, you're really not going to be able to feel his ribs. But again, a horse that's looking that he's a fairly fit kind of horse. The upper level, our 9s or 8s and 9s, are going to be really the chubby ones, ones that are extremely obese. These horses, no matter what you do, you can't feel any ribs or any bones on them. The problems with the 8 and 9s is that they're extremely susceptible to other issues, such as developing laminitis, such as developing colic. They're also horses that tend to might also develop some of the different metabolic issues, and so we really want to avoid them being very fat, such as this. In the summer months, they're going to be horses that also do not handle the heat very well because they're carrying way too much weight. So we've got the two extremes of probably the 1s to the 4s that we want to avoid, and the 8s and 9s that we want to avoid, and we'd really rather our horses be in that middle range of a 5, 6, or 7. Okay, so I don't think it's very hard for anyone to look at these two horses here knowing that the yellow horse here is very undesirable, whereas the sorrel horse over here is going to be way more desirable. On this one, I don't even have to put my hands on this horse, and I'm going to say she's probably sitting around that 3-ish range, 2 to 3 range, where you can easily see her ribs, her hip bones are sticking out, you can see her scapula, her withers, the shape of her down her neck, and extremely skinny, so she's probably in that 2 to 3-ish range. This mare, she's difficult to say for sure what she is until you run your hands over them. And that's one thing when we condition score horses, it's best if you can run your hands over those different areas. I would say she's somewhere in that 6 or 7-ish range, maybe an 8. We can see fat behind her shoulder. We can't see her ribs. Again, she's got some fat over her withers and all in those different areas, but you can't really say how fat she actually is unless I would take my hands and palpate it and go ahead and run it over her. Kind of some other images or pictures that you might see. Again, these are horses that are between 2s and 3s, and probably ones that we're going to say for the most part are pretty unacceptable. Mares that, or a couple horses that if you have them, you want to kind of hide them and try to do the different kinds of things you need to go ahead and put weight on them, because not really where you want those horses to be. These are some horses that are borderline of the 4. Okay, this mare, you can see her ribs are sticking out. You can look over her neck. Kind of easy to see her ribs. I'd say this horse is a little bit younger, probably a little bit lighter than this mare is over here. But they're going to be those borderlines of 4s, and we really don't want them to sit this level, because if they do go to working, they're probably going to lose weight and get down even lower than what we want them to be. And so anything that's kind of a 4 or below, we're going to try to feed them, check their teeth. deworm them, and try to do some things to get them to be a little bit higher condition score. Okay, here's a couple horses that were in feedlots, and you can see that they're really where we would like them to be, kind of in that acceptable range of a 5 to a 7. I can't tell you for sure which they are until I would run my hands over them, but just looking over their neck, behind their shoulders, over their withers, they're going to be somewhere in that 5 to 7 range, which is really where we'd like all of our horses to be. Here's some others that again are sitting in that 6 to 7-ish range. We've got some pictures of them from behind and from the side. And again, a couple horses that are just in good flesh, good shape, where we'd pretty much like most of our horses to be. To do the best job, again, you really need to run your hands over them. Now we get to the upper side, where this horse is a 9, and then we got her to lose some weight. She's down to an 8. This is actually a horse that I had that was out on pasture when we first brought her in from pasture. If you look at her, she's extremely fat. She's up in that 9-ish range with a lot of fat all over her. After about a month of being inside and ridden, she was getting a little bit more acceptable, a little bit thin. Not thin, but a little bit more of a more desirable condition score. But again, ones in this range, she's going to be up in that higher risk factor, and ones that we really wanted them to avoid them being that heavy. The other thing to remember is there is a hair coat factor, and these images, these pictures of these horses are when they're in their summer hair coat. So you can see them, you need to run your hands over them, and that's not as big of an issue. But when we get into the winter time, you will have those fuzzy hair coats that can cover up and they can mask, and you might not know how skinny those or fat those horses truly are. Because remember, especially when it's really cold, their hair coat's going to stand up and be more fluffy the colder that it is. These are some little minis that actually, my husband got called out on an abuse case, and I actually got to run my hands over them, and you can't tell it from these pictures, but you could lay a finger between each and every rib of these horses, of these minis. Same thing with the little burr up here. And until you did that, it was difficult to know that these guys really were probably about a condition score of 2 or 3. And so as you get into the winter months, if you're not handling and working those horses on a regular basis, I'd suggest that you really just kind of catch them, run your hands over them periodically to make sure that they are staying in that 5, 6, or 7 kind of range. If you want to know more about body conditioning scoring, we do have a new mobile app that's available. If you can find it just by searching Horse BCS. This is a link that you can go to find the app, and I've put in a couple of screenshots because if you have horses there over time, it's a really good tool that you can have to catalog the condition of those horses and then watch them over time to make sure that they are staying where you want them to be. If you have a horse that you bring in, maybe you're going to lease him or loan him for a period of time, and you want to say, okay, this is what he was when he came in, and then you can say this is when he leaves. It's a really good way that you can do it. When you go into the first person of the app, page of the app, there is this, and you can go to the Learn feature that will go through and show you images, all the various body condition scores, so you can learn it and be a little bit more familiar with what those different condition scores actually are. Then when you go into Score a Horse, this is a picture from the scoring page of one that I actually already did. And so you can go in and you'll take a picture of the horse, and once you do that, you'll put the horse's name in there, and also it will have the date that you condition scored him. It will also have the location that you did him at. And then you will go in and actually go ahead and on all the different locations, identify where you think, what the condition score you think that they are, and then it will give you what the average is. You can go down to the Learn feature and see the different images of some of the different horses if you're not sure what they should look at those different locations. So it's a really good feature. It's a really nice, very usable app that can be used to help document what those horses are and then track them over time. This will also, you can download it also to your desktop, and once you do that, you can go ahead and print the records for each of those different horses. So basically, I just wanted to give you a little bit of things to maybe open your eyes, make you aware of condition scoring those horses that will also help you maintain them in such a way that they're going to be useful for you over time. And remember that things might change over the winter time versus the summertime, so those horses can be very useful to you over the entire course of the year.